The Skinwalker, the forbidden shapeshifter of the American Southwest. Somewhere in the high desert, on a road that cuts through reservation land, headlights catch something at the edge of the asphalt. It moves on 4 legs, then 2, then 4 again. Not like an animal learning to stand, like something that learned to move by watching both and chose neither. The driver doesn't stop, because in Navajo tradition, there are some things you don't chase, some things you don't name, some things you don't even look at too long. And if you do, if you stop, if you speak, if you follow, you've already made the invitation. This is the story of the Naaldlooshii, the one who walks on all 4s, the forbidden shapeshifter of the American Southwest. But before we go further, there's something you need to understand. This is not a story that wants to be told. The Four Corners region, Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, Colorado, mesas that rise like altars, canyons carved by wind and time, a landscape older than the nations that named it. This is Navajo land, Diné-Bikéyah, home to the Navajo Nation, one of the largest indigenous territories in the United States. And it is here, woven into the spiritual fabric of this place, that the Skinwalker exists. Not as folklore, not as legend, as belief. The Navajo call it Naaldlooshii. With it, he goes on all 4s. Most will not say the name aloud, especially at night, especially near home, because in Navajo cosmology, to speak of a thing is to call it, to name it is to give it attention, and attention is a form of invitation. The English word skinwalker is an approximation, a translation that flattens something vast and spiritually complex into 2 syllables. But even that word carries weight. Even that word should be handled carefully. For generations, Navajo elders and community members have said the same thing to outsiders. Do not speak of this. Do not ask about this. Do not go looking for this. Not because it isn't real, because it is. And the more you talk about it, the more you think about it, the more you open a door that was never meant to be opened. This is not a ghost story shared around a campfire for fun. This is a spiritual boundary, and we are about to cross it. Not to sensationalize, not to hunt, but to understand what it means when fascination overrides respect, and what happens when a warning is ignored. In Navajo tradition, there are those who heal, medicine people, practitioners of sacred ceremonies meant to restore hojo, balance, harmony, beauty. They learn the songs, the prayers, the way to walk in balance with the world. And then there are those who learned the same songs, the same ceremonies, so they would know exactly how to undo them. A skinwalker is not born. They are not cursed by accident or tragedy. They are made by choice, by someone who looked at every sacred taboo and chose to shatter them all. The specifics are not spoken, but the shape of it is always the same, a transgression so profound it inverts the soul, killing a close relative, desecrating the dead, twisting healing ceremonies into curses, acts that sever a person from their community, their humanity, their place in the sacred order. And in exchange, they gain power, the power to transform, to wear the skin of an animal and become it, to move faster than any living thing, to spread sickness, madness, and death. Coyote, wolf, owl, crow, dog. The skinwalker is most often seen in animal form, but wrong. Eyes that reflect light like a human's, a gait that shifts between 4 legs and 2, a voice that mimics speech, laughter, or the crying of a child. Witnesses describe the same feeling. This is not an animal. This is something wearing an animal, and it knows you're watching. On reservation roads at night, drivers report figures running alongside their vehicles, keeping pace at 60, 70 miles per hour. Families hear scratching at windows, tapping on roofs, voices calling their names from outside, voices that sound like relatives, friends, children. But when they look, nothing, or worse, something staring back, not trying to get in, just testing, waiting. Most who experience it will not give details. They'll say only, something was wrong. It wasn't an animal. We don't talk about it, because to talk about it is to keep the door open, and some doors should never be opened twice. The Skinwalker is rooted in Navajo belief, but the idea of the Skinwalker has spread far beyond the Four Corners. In the 1990s, The X-Files aired an episode featuring shapeshifters. Cryptid forums began cataloging sightings. Reddit threads collected hundreds of encounters. And then came Skinwalker Ranch, a 512-acre property in Utah's Uinta Basin, purchased in the 1990s by businessman Robert Bigelow after reports of strange phenomena, UFOs, poltergeist activity, cattle mutilations, creatures that defied explanation. Bigelow funded investigations. Journalist George Knapp wrote a book. The ranch became famous, and it was given a name, Skinwalker Ranch. But here's the problem. The ranch is not on Navajo land. It's on Ute land. The Ute have their own spiritual traditions, but Skinwalker is a Navajo term, a Navajo belief. The name was applied retroactively, a marketing decision, a way to brand a mystery, and in doing so, it stripped the belief of its context. It turned a sacred and feared spiritual reality into a commodity, a tourist attraction, a television show. Navajo community members have spoken clearly. Stop using our beliefs as entertainment. Stop hunting for stories. Stop treating this like a cryptid, a monster, a myth. Indigenous scholars have written extensively about the harm done when spiritual beliefs are turned into pop culture fodder, when the context is stripped away, when the requests for silence are ignored, when fascination becomes extraction. And yet, the fascination continues. YouTube videos promising real Skinwalker footage, social media users filming encounters in the desert, horror movies that use the name without understanding the weight. The warning was given, and it was ignored. Within Navajo belief, the Skinwalker is real, not metaphorical, not symbolic, a spiritual reality with real consequences. But outside that context, most of what circulates online is misattribution, hoax, or appropriation. Coyotes behaving like coyotes, filmed at night and called proof. Stories written by non-native people and presented as true accounts. Phenomena at Skinwalker Ranch that may have nothing to do with Navajo beliefs at all. The shape of the story has been borrowed, but the meaning has been left behind. The Skinwalker is terrifying, but not because it's a monster, because it's a person who chose to become one. In most folklore, the werewolf is cursed. The vampire is turned against their will. The ghost is trapped by tragedy. But the Skinwalker wanted this. They looked at every sacred boundary, every law meant to protect the community, the balance, the living world, and they chose to cross them all. For power, for revenge, for selfish gain. That is the true horror, not the transformation, the inversion, the healer who becomes the poisoner, the human who becomes the thing that hunts humans. But there is another horror, a modern one. The horror of fascination without respect, of wanting to know a story you were told not to ask about, of hunting for something you were warned not to hunt. In Navajo belief, to think about the Skinwalker is to invite its attention. To speak of it is to call it. To obsess over it is to open yourself to it. And so the question becomes, what are we doing right now by telling this story, by watching this video, by searching for more? Are we honoring a tradition, or are we we crossing a boundary we were explicitly told not to cross? There is grief in this story, the grief of a people who have been asked again and again to share their land, their resources, their sacred knowledge, and who have watched again and again as that knowledge is taken, repackaged, and sold back to them as entertainment. The Skinwalker is not a mascot. It is not a brand. It is not a monster for a streaming series. It is part of a living spiritual tradition, one that has explicitly asked to be left alone. And that request, that boundary, is part of the story too, because the horror of the Skinwalker is not just what it is, it's what it represents: the breaking of sacred law, the inversion of healing into harm, the choice to destroy balance for personal gain. And when we, as outsiders, ignore the requests of the Navajo people, when we take their spiritual beliefs and turn them into content, we are committing our own inversion. We are taking something meant to protect and turning it into something that harms, not with claws or teeth, but with disrespect, with extraction, with the refusal to honor a boundary. The Skinwalker chose to cross every line, and in doing so, became something less than human. What does it say about us when we choose to cross the line we were asked not to cross? There are stories in this world that do not belong to everyone. Knowledge that is not meant to be shared freely. Boundaries that exist for a reason. The Skinwalker is one of them. And the tragedy is not just that the Skinwalker exists. It's that we were warned clearly and repeatedly, and we couldn't stop ourselves from looking, from speaking, from calling. In Navajo tradition, there is a concept called hojo, balance, harmony, walking in beauty with the world. The Skinwalker is the destruction of that balance, the deliberate shattering of harmony. And every time we tell this story without permission, every time we turn sacred fear into entertainment, every time we ignore the voices asking us to stop, we participate in that destruction, not as witches, not as shapeshifters, but as people who chose fascination over respect. And that choice has consequences too. Somewhere in the desert, something moves at the edge of the light, something that was human once, something that chose to become otherwise. And somewhere else, in the glow of a screen, someone searches for more, for footage, for proof, for the thrill of forbidden knowledge, ignoring the warning, opening the door, making the invitation. Some stories were never meant to be told by everyone. Some names were never meant to be spoken. Some doors were never meant to be opened. And the greatest tragedy is not that the Skinwalker exists. It's that we were told to look away, and we couldn't.